It was supposed to be the happiest day of their lives. The day that Jordan and Mia had been planning for months. A dream wedding where everything was supposed to go perfectly. The decorations were breathtaking. Ivory flowers intertwined with deep, rich purple blooms, the grand hall shimmering with fairy lights. The guests had gathered with eager smiles, anticipating a celebration of love. Jordan stood at the altar, his face radiating excitement as he awaited his bride, while Mia, in her stunning white gown, slowly made her way down the aisle, her heart pounding with anticipation. But no one knew that in the midst of the love and joy, something dark was brewing, something no one could have predicted. Mia's steps faltered as she neared the altar. She caught a glimpse of Jordan's face, a fleeting moment where her gut twisted with doubt. There was something in his eyes, a flicker of unease that made her question everything she had thought she knew about him. But she shrugged it off, telling herself it was just pre-wedding nerves. She reached the altar, where Jordan took her hands with a warm smile, but his grip felt strangely tight, too intense. As they exchanged vows, the air was thick with emotion, the ceremony moving smoothly. But as the officiant asked for the rings, the first sign of trouble appeared. The best man, Jordan's closest friend, had an awkward expression on his face. He fumbled with the rings, his hands shaking, as if he could feel the tension that was building. Jordan's jaw clenched, but Mia didn't notice, lost in the moment, in the vision of spending forever with the man she loved. Everything seemed fine, until it wasn't. It happened so quickly that no one could react in time. A loud crash rang through the room, echoing off the walls, as Jordan, in a fit of rage, hurled a glass towards Mia. It struck her cheek with a sickening thud, splintering into jagged pieces. The guests froze, their eyes wide in disbelief. Mia staggered back, her hand instinctively reaching to her face where the glass had made contact, blood beginning to trickle down her cheek. The room fell into stunned silence, broken only by the sound of the glass shards scattering across the floor. Mia's eyes searched Jordan's face for an explanation, but all she found was a cold, distant look, a look that chilled her to the bone. The guests were still in shock, unable to comprehend what they had just witnessed. Was this some sort of sick joke? Was Jordan having some sort of breakdown? Mia's heart raced as she tried to make sense of it. She glanced around, hoping for someone, anyone, to intervene. But the room was paralyzed. The officiant stood there, mouth agape, unsure of what to do. Mia's mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. Her dream wedding, the day she had imagined since she was a little girl, had just taken a twisted turn. Jordan, now visibly trembling, stepped forward, his voice trembling with what could only be described as regret, anger, and fear. "Mia, I didn't mean to," he stammered, his eyes not meeting hers. "I don't know what came over me. His words faltered, but the damage had already been done. The tension in the room was palpable, thick with disbelief and confusion. Mia, in shock, couldn't look at him. She had never seen him like this before. There was a side to Jordan she didn't know existed. He was supposed to be her partner, her protector, the one person she could trust above all others. But now, standing before her with his trembling hands and his face twisted in a mixture of fear and something darker, she wondered if she had ever truly known him at all. The guests began to murmur, unsure of what to do. Some whispered behind their hands, others sat in stunned silence. The wedding, once a joyous occasion, had now become a nightmare. How could this be happening? How could this be the same man who had promised to love and cherish Mia, to stand by her side through thick and thin? What had triggered this outburst? Mia's heart felt heavy, her mind racing to make sense of it all. She wanted to run, to flee from the place that had once held so many happy memories. But she couldn't move. The glass on the floor gleamed ominously, a stark reminder of the violent turn their day had taken. She was covered in his actions, marked by the shattered pieces of their so-called love. Her mind screamed for an explanation, but there was none to be had, Not in that moment, not in that room full of silent witnesses. For a brief, terrifying moment, Mia thought the world had stopped, frozen in time. Then Jordan moved closer, his eyes wide with panic. "Mia, please," he begged, his voice breaking. "I swear, this wasn't me. You have to understand. It's not what you think." But Mia couldn't hear him. All she could hear was the deafening silence that followed his words, the room closing in around her. She felt a wave of nausea rise within her as her mind raced, every question about their relationship, about Jordan, flooding her thoughts. Who was this man standing before her? Who had he become? And in the midst of all this chaos, one question stood out above all the others. What had happened to make him throw the glass at her in front of everyone? Was this a one-time outburst, or was it something more? Mia's gaze never left Jordan, her eyes searching his face for any sign of remorse or understanding. But there was nothing. Only fear, confusion, and the faintest hint of anger simmering beneath the surface. A cold, unsettling thought crept into Mia's mind. What if this wasn't the first time? What if there was more to Jordan's story, things he had hidden from her, things that no one had ever suspected? As the tension in the room built to a boiling point, Mia's mind raced with the possibilities. She had never seen this side of him, never imagined it was even a possibility. But now, as she stood there, blood dripping down her cheek, she couldn't ignore the truth any longer. Something was terribly wrong. She turned slowly, the weight of the moment pressing down on her chest. The guests were still frozen, the silence almost suffocating. But Mia knew she couldn't stay in that room any longer. Not with Jordan, not with what had just happened. She couldn't face him. Not now. With trembling hands, she took a step back, her heart pounding in her ears. As she turned to leave, Jordan's voice broke through the air, desperate and pleading. "Mia, please don't leave. I need you." But Mia didn't stop. She couldn't stop. Not until she had the answers she so desperately needed. And as she fled from the altar, from the shattered dream of her perfect wedding, the room fell into chaos. The guests didn't know what to do, the air thick with confusion and fear. And as Mia stepped into the hallway, away from the wreckage of her once perfect day, one thought consumed her. Was this the end of their love story, or was it only the beginning of something much darker? Mia stumbled down the hallway, her breath shallow, her heart racing. The sound of her heels kicking against the floor echoed in the emptiness, the only noise in the chaos she had just fled. She didn't know where she was going, didn't care. She just needed to get away, to clear her head. The cold, sterile walls of the venue felt suffocating, a sharp contrast to the warmth and joy she had imagined for this day. What had just happened? How had everything spiraled so quickly? Her hand instinctively reached up to her cheek, where the glass had struck her, the wound still stinging. But it wasn't just the physical pain that tore at her. It was the betrayal, the shock, and the confusion. Jordan had always been the person she turned to, the one she trusted above all else. And now here she was, running away from him, unsure of whether the man she had known even existed anymore. She stopped in front of a large mirror, her reflection distorted by the tears welling up in her eyes. She could barely recognize herself. How had everything gone so wrong? Her wedding day, the one she had dreamed about for years, had turned into a nightmare. The man she had planned to spend the rest of her life with had shattered her heart in front of everyone. Was there more to this? Was Jordan hiding something darker? Her thoughts were interrupted by a faint knock at the door. Startled, Mia turned to face it, the pulse quickening. She wasn't ready to face anyone, not yet. But the knock came again, more insistent this time. Hesitantly, she opened the door just a crack, only to find Jordan's best friend Mark, standing there, his face pale, and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Mia, please," Mark pleaded, his voice quiet but urgent. "I know you're upset, but you need to talk to him. He's falling apart right now." Mia's chest tightened at his words. I don't want to talk to him. Not after what just happened. I get it, Mark said quickly, holding up his hands in defense. But you don't understand. This isn't who Jordan is. He's been dealing with a lot. A lot that he hasn't told you. Please, just hear him out. He's not the monster you think he is. Mia's anger flared, her emotions swirling. A lot? He threw a glass at me. He humiliated me in front of everyone. And you want me to hear him out? She shook her head, her voice trembling with frustration. I don't even know who he is anymore. Mark's face softened, the edges of his expression warm with exhaustion. I know, Mia. I know. But there's more to this story than you realize. Jordan, he's not just a guy you fell in love with. There are things in his past, things he never told you, that he's been running from. And today, it all came to a head. Mia stared at him, her mind spinning. She had always known Jordan had a complicated history, but she never imagined it could be anything like this. What was Mark trying to say? What had Jordan been hiding? She needed answers, and Mark seemed to be the only person who could give them to her. I don't know what's going on with him, Mark continued, but I can tell you this much. Whatever happened, it wasn't meant to hurt you. He was trying to protect you in his own messed up way, but things got out of control. Mia took a step back, trying to make sense of his words. Jordan had been trying to protect her. From what? And why would he throw a glass at her if he truly cared about her? It didn't make sense. But something in Mark's voice told her there was truth to what he was saying. He wasn't making excuses. He was trying to explain something far deeper, something she wasn't ready to hear. You have to talk to him, Mia, Mark urged, his voice low and pleading. If you don't, he's going to spiral. He's already on the edge, and if you walk away from him now, I'm afraid it might be too late. Mia felt a lump form in her throat. She didn't know what to do. Her heart wanted to believe Mark, wanted to believe that Jordan wasn't beyond saving. But her mind screamed at her to walk away. She had been humiliated, betrayed in the worst possible way. Could she really go back to him after what had happened? Could she trust him again? Please, Mark whispered, his eyes full of regret. He needs you right now. I don't know what's going on in his head, but I do know he's hurting. And he's scared. I've seen it in his eyes for weeks. Mia stood frozen, torn between the urge to run and the pull of the love she once felt for Jordan. She had never seen him like this, never imagined he could be capable of something so cruel. But Mark's words cut through the anger, the hurt, and the confusion. If she walked away now, would she ever be able to live with the question of what could have been? Was there still a chance to fix things, or was it too late? With a shaky breath, Mia wiped her eyes, trying to steady herself. I'll talk to him, but I need to understand. I need to know what's really going on, Mark. I need the truth. Mark nodded solemnly. I'll take you to him. They made their way to a quiet room, far from the noise of the reception. As they entered, Mia's eyes immediately found Jordan. He was sitting on the floor, his back against the wall, his face pale and drawn, his hands trembling. The sight of him, broken, vulnerable, shocked her. This wasn't the man who had just thrown a glass at her. This wasn't the man who had humiliated her in front of everyone. This was someone else entirely. Jordan, Mia said softly, the voice shaky. What happened? Why did you do that? Jordan looked up at her, his eyes filled with a mixture of shame, guilt, and something else, something darker. Mia, I never wanted to hurt you. I swear, I never wanted this. Mia took a step closer, her heart torn. Then why did you throw that glass at me? Why did you do that in front of everyone? Jordan swallowed hard, his voice cracking. Because I couldn't control it anymore. I couldn't stop it. There's something inside me, Mia. Something I've been running from for years. And today, it all just came out. Mia's chest tightened. What are you talking about? What's inside you, Jordan? For the first time since the ceremony, Jordan finally met her gaze, his eyes desperate. It's the thing I've been hiding from you, Mia. The thing I never wanted you to know about me. The reason I pushed you away. The reason I don't deserve you. He paused, his breath hitching as he tried to find the words. I've been struggling with it for so long, and today it broke me. Mia's pulse quickened. What was he talking about? What could be so terrible that it would make him do something like that? She couldn't understand, couldn't fathom the depth of what he was confessing. She opened her mouth to ask more, but before she could speak, the door to the room slammed open. Mark's face had gone pale, his eyes wide with fear. We don't have much time, he said urgently, looking back and forth between Mia and Jordan. There's something you need to know, Mia. Something you weren't supposed to find out. The tension in the room thickened, and Mia felt her stomach drop. What wasn't she supposed to know? What was Jordan keeping from her? And how far would this twisted web of secrets go? Mia's heart pounded in her chest as Mark's words hung in the air, thick with anticipation. She glanced between him and Jordan, feeling a chill creep down her spine. What could possibly be so serious that Mark was now looking at them both with fear in his eyes? Mark, what are you talking about? Mia asked, her voice barely above a whisper. She was trying to keep it together, but the uncertainty of the situation was overwhelming. She had barely recovered from the shock of the glass being thrown at her, and now this new layer of tension was suffocating. Mark swallowed hard, clearly grappling with the weight of what he was about to say. Mia, Jordan, he's been battling with something far worse than just anger issues. There's more to his past than anyone knew. His voice cracked as he continued. Jordan's father, Mia, he's been abusive. And not just to Jordan, but to everyone around him. The worst part is, Jordan never told you any of this. He's been hiding it, trying to protect you from what he's been carrying. Mia stared at Mark, her mind struggling to process the revelation. Jordan had never spoken about his family's history, but hearing it now, it felt like a slap to the face. Was it true? Had Jordan really been keeping such a dark secret from her all this time? Could this pain he'd been hiding be the reason behind the outburst today? The glass? The rage? Was it all somehow linked to his past? Jordan looked away, his face drained of color. I didn't want you to know, Mia. I thought if I kept it buried, I could protect you from the fallout. I didn't want you to see me for the broken person I really am. His voice trembled, and his hands clenched into fists at his sides. I didn't want to hurt you. But today, when you said that thing about me being perfect, I snapped. I felt like I was losing control of everything, like I was becoming him. Mia's stomach lurched as the realization hit her. The glass had been more than just an outburst of anger. It had been a symptom of a much deeper, hidden struggle. Jordan wasn't just upset with her, or with the pressure of the wedding. He was reliving the trauma of his past. The man she thought she knew had been living with that weight, silently carrying it, and now it was spilling over. Her heart ached for him, but at the same time, the betrayal stung. He had kept this from her, and in doing so, he had thrown their entire relationship into chaos. She had always prided herself on being able to trust him with everything, but now she was faced with the truth that Jordan had kept this part of himself locked away, afraid to let her in. Why didn't you tell me? Mia's voice was barely audible, her throat tight. Why did you keep this from me, Jordan? He let out a shaky breath, his voice raw with emotion. I thought I could handle it on my own. I didn't want you to look at me the way you're looking at me now. I didn't want you to see me as someone who couldn't protect you. But today, I lost it. I couldn't keep the mask on anymore. I couldn't pretend that everything was fine. Mark stepped closer, his eyes full of sympathy. Mia, this isn't who he is. He's not that man. But he's been living in the shadow of that pain for so long, he doesn't know how to deal with it. And that's why today happened. But you're the one person who can help him, Mia. You're the reason he's even trying. Mia stood still, trying to process everything. Her emotions were torn between anger, sadness, and a deep, aching compassion. She had been hurt, humiliated, and betrayed, but Jordan wasn't a monster. He was someone who had been living with demons that were only now coming to light. The question was, could she help him? Could she stand by his side after everything that had happened? Was there a way forward for them, or had this shattered everything beyond repair? Tears welled in her eyes as she took a tentative step toward Jordan. His face was a mask of guilt and regret, and the sight of him so broken made her heart ache. "Jordan," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I don't know if I can forgive you right now, but I understand. I understand why you did what you did." Jordan's eyes flickered with hope, and he slowly reached out to her, his voice barely a whisper. "Mia, please. Give me a chance to prove to you that I'm not him. I don't want to lose you. I need you." Mia hesitated for a moment, her mind a storm of conflicting emotions. She couldn't forget what had happened, the shock, the hurt, the betrayal. But she also couldn't ignore the man standing before her, the man who was begging for a second chance. Slowly, she took his hand, her fingers trembling as she intertwined them with his. "I'm not promising anything," she said softly, her voice steady despite the rawness in her chest. "But I'll try. I'll try to understand. I'll try to be here for you, but only if you're really ready to face what's inside you. You have to be honest with me from now on. No more hiding." Jordan nodded fervently, tears welling in his eyes. "I swear, Mia, I'll do whatever it takes." The room fell silent for a moment as they stood there, the weight of the decision hanging in the air. The future was uncertain, fragile, but Mia knew one thing for sure: this was not the end. They still had a long road ahead of them, one filled with healing, growth, and tough conversations. But for the first time in what felt like an eternity, Mia felt a flicker of hope. "I'm not giving up on you, Jordan," she said quietly, her voice full of resolve. "But I need you to be strong. For both of us." Jordan's grip tightened around her hand, and he nodded, a sense of relief washing over him. "I will. I promise." As they stood there, locked in that moment of tentative reconciliation, the past still loomed over them, but the future felt just a little bit brighter. They had a long road ahead, full of challenges, full of uncertainty, but it was a road they would walk together. And maybe, just maybe, they could heal the wounds that had torn them apart. Only time would tell if their love could truly survive this, but for now, the first step had been taken. And in that moment, Mia realized something that she hadn't understood before. Love wasn't just about the good times. It was about facing the darkness together, understanding each other's pain, and choosing to fight for each other even when it seemed impossible. Whether or not they would make it through this was yet to be seen. But one thing was clear: neither of them was giving up just yet. The real journey had only just begun.